JeNae Goodrich was adopted into her own family as a child. Growing up surrounded by adopted siblings helped prepare her for a life of social work. But she couldn't have predicted that she would have gotten involved with one of the toughest, most stressful, and even controversial sides of adoption. Find out more about JeNae and the work she does, this time on Adoption Uncovered. If you can just start by telling me your name and what you're doing with adoption.
Yes. So my name is JeNae Goodrich. I'm a licensed clinical social worker with Wasatch International Adoptions. They're located in Utah. And we have two programs underneath that agency where we do second adoptions. So we help children who've been previously adopted. Most of them have been through foster care or internationally, but we do get some domestic adoptions as well. When they're older, they're not working out and they're not thriving in their current home, and so we help to find them new placements. So.
Well, yeah, that sounds fascinating. I'd love to know, what got you interested in working with this type of adoption?
I was adopted myself. I've got 5 adopted siblings as well. So I've got a very colorful family, and adoption was something that was always near and dear to my heart growing up. And I worked at an adoption agency in Texas and then here in Utah. So I've just always loved adoption. And originally, so we have a program within Wasatch, one of the programs, it's called Second Chance Adoptions. And it's been going strong for a long time, like 13 plus years or so. And so we just recently started the KidTeen program, which is what I run. And that is for older kids, because we knew that the older kids needed help too. And the Second Chance program either wasn't successful or wasn't able to really reach that age range. And so I honestly think it's been so helpful, like having the two programs split up, because we'll get families in the KidTeen program that want to adopt teenagers and older kids and things like that. So when I started working for Wasatch a few years ago, I didn't really know about this program a whole lot. But when I heard that they needed some help with Second Chance, so I help with their intakes as a social worker. And then when Anne decided she wanted to retire, one of my coworkers, my boss was talking to me about the position, and it just felt right. And so now I'm super passionate about it and doing everything I can to help these kids.
Relationships of all kinds are hard. Some of those relationships end. That is never an easy decision or without consequences. JeNae is there if adoptive families find they need to look into the option of finding another home for their child.
So like I said, Second Chance has been going strong for a very long time. So they're pretty well known within the adoption community. And so we get a lot of referrals and things from word of mouth. I think the last few families that just applied to the program were all friends of former families that were in the program. So either they knew someone that had adopted from the program or placed from the program. We get a lot of interest because we've got Facebook groups, and Wasatch International Adoptions we have their website. And so we'll get a lot of families that are just interested in adoption in general, and they're doing their research. And so they stumble across our page.
Reactive attachment disorder is something many adoptive families have to learn about as they train to receive a child. This intense disorder can be present in children who have experienced trauma and a lack of attachment with caregivers in their young childhood. When they do arrive in a new house with more supportive parents, the effects of that initial trauma can remain and present with a lack of attachment and other extreme, unpredictable behaviors. While the disorder is well established, Treatment for these children is very individual and sometimes very elusive.
So do you find like consistencies with the kids you see? Like do a lot of them have reactive attachment disorder or other conditions like that?
Yeah, I think a lot of our kids have reactive attachment disorder, um, or at least symptoms of it. Um, because, in some states there you'll have therapists that aren't wanting to diagnose that, or, this and that. So I do think that we get a lot of kids that have those types of symptoms. I really think that they all have some sort of trouble with bonding with some sort of individual in the home. Most of the time, it's the mother for some reason. I don't know why moms kind of get the brunt of that, if you will. But then these kids may be doing well in school, or right, they're really social and they're able to make friends, or they're a completely different person outside of their house, and the family is just, I don't understand, like, how you're talking about a completely different person, at home he or she is like this, and it is just so hard. And so I think almost all of the kids have some sort of issue with bonding. There's some sort of strained relationship. I have one kid right now in the program who feels as though he was young enough. He was adopted internationally, but feels as though his adoptive parents now kidnapped him, and so he's never felt really bonded to them, and is older now, and asking for another home, almost like he knows that he just can't let that go. And so it's interesting. It's really interesting.
Yeah, especially if you can talk to these kids about, I mean, they're not little kids, right? They have
Yeah.
a say in this. They have a
Yeah, especially
so
in the KidTeen program. Yeah, we specifically see, we usually go as low as like 9. I've had one 8-year-old, but then my oldest right now is 14. Um, so we haven't really had anyone over that, because in each state, every state has, different laws in certain ages, either age 10, 12, or 14, they need to consent to the adoption if they're a certain age. And so most of the kids in my program either know about it and are in agreement that they want to be adopted, want to find a family for them, or they find out shortly about it after, because sometimes our placing families don't want to tell their kids right away, just in case they're unable to find them a family. They don't want the children feeling even more rejected, because the parents are already feeling this. Like, we don't want for you to feel that we're rejecting you. They may feel that with their parents, and then they can't find another family. Oh, so I'm being rejected again.
oh my gosh.
Oh, so yeah, so a lot of my kids know about it, or I have one girl that she has been wanting a new family. We found a family that we felt would be a really good match for her, and her parents talked with her, and initially she said no and was super anxious about it. But these past few weeks she's been working in therapy with her therapist and has been able to do Zoom calls with this couple, and is in agreement, and is like, nope, they've answered all my questions. I feel a lot more comfortable, moving forward. And so she was able to sign her legal consent recently, and is, going to move forward. So I know in our second chance program, the kids are a lot younger. They get older kids in there every now and then as well, but most of the time they're like 7 and younger. And so a lot of time those children don't know from the beginning. They find out before transition that this is what's going to happen.
JeNae is often faced with families who are at an impossible crossroads. she's able to find a way to bring them to a place where they can function and face the choices ahead of them.
That sounds like it is super tricky to navigate for you to be, so you're sort of the middleman there among these people, all of which are in this super heightened stressful state.
Yeah.
And like, how do you deal with that when you go into the office every day?
Right. Well, I definitely have to do my own self-care. That's for sure. But like I said in the beginning, I've always been passionate about adoption. And so being able to, be in charge of this specific program and help families, on both sides has just been so rewarding. And so I think, when I look back at, if I'm having a hard day, I look back at the placements I have made, or how well children are doing in their new homes, or this and that, and it makes it a lot easier to get through the day. But it's just fun. My families are fun though.
Well, that is an interesting word to use in this scenario, but I believe you.
It is an interest, yes, and maybe that wasn't the right word to use. I'm a very open person, and it takes a lot to really irritate me or set me off or things like that. And so I think I've helped these families just to feel more comfortable around the situation.
Right.
And so, it is a difficult thing. And, we may start off the call where one of them's crying, but then by the end of it, we may be laughing and connecting. And so I guess that's what that's what I mean. I don't mean to make it sound like, make the situation seem less than it is, but
I mean, it makes it sounds like what you're able to do is take something that's like overwhelming and bring it down to, okay, this is where we are. This is normal or whatever. This is a situation that we can handle. It's
exactly.
a
It's
size
okay to be
situation.
feeling this way. Yeah. And because I get so many parents that are placing families, especially, that they feel so much guilt. They feel so much shame, right? Like, I wasn't enough as a parent, or why couldn't they have connected with us instead of this new family? Because maybe their child's doing well in their new family and whatnot. And so it really takes a toll on the families and their communities, especially these communities that they've never seen the child in this quote unquote negative light, right? They out and about, they're like perfect angels and super helpful and charming, and then they hear that, wait, he's in residential treatment, or you placed your child for adoption. What? Like, we've had families that other family members have disowned them or not wanted to talk with them because of the decision that they made. Like, adoption should be a forever thing. And yes, we believe that as well, but there are these cases where that just doesn't happen. And so we're just here to support them. And it's just hard. Sometimes the families don't have the type of support that they need when they make a decision like this.
Yeah, well, it sounds like what you're dealing with, what these kids are dealing with, is really confusing to the people around them. Is it so you're saying it's pretty typical for them to like look pretty normal in school and then come home and have really extreme behaviors?
Yeah, I was talking to a mom today, and she was telling me that her child doesn't get along with her husband very well. It's kind of hit or miss waves with her. They go out and about, and he's a gem, super happy. No one would know. They come home, and he's glaring at dad, not talking to him, basically coexisting with him, right? There's all of this attachment that is not happening. So it's just interesting. That doesn't happen in every case, but we do see that a lot, that at home, the child is a completely different person than out in public.
It takes a special family to adopt a child from this program. Sometimes that special quality is hard to put into words. JeNae has to have the instinct to find families who can fill this unique role.
Do you find that you're able to be pretty successful with your placements so far?
Yeah,
Um,
so far we've been really successful. It's KidTeen has only been going for 2 years, so it's still very new as far as our age group, but things have been going really well. I'm just thinking I've had a couple kids that just transitioned to their new home, and I've got two more that are going to transition soon, and um yeah, it's been really great. So far things have been have been going well.
so another thing I was wondering, like, so these families that are taking these kids that didn't attach originally or whatever the situation was, do they need to have special training, or is there something unique about them? They have extra time on their hands, or
Yeah,
are they
yeah,
just families that
yeah,
come along?
yeah. And I mean, I think a little bit of everything, but the families that we prefer, and the families do as well, just because when our placing families come to us, they've already like they're at the end of their rope. They're not entirely sure what to do, and so things are pretty stressful at their home. And so they're hoping to be able to find a placement better for their child quickly. And so we like to work with home study ready families, or families who have a home study that can be updated quickly. Now, that's not to say that we couldn't work with someone who doesn't have a home study, because I have had um, a couple families those families that were home study ready, and I presented, their profiles and their home studies to the families. They just didn't quite feel that they were right. But there was one family who was still in the process of doing their home study that they wanted to know more about, and they really clicked. And so this is always something I would talk with my families about, but they were willing to wait, for this family to complete everything. And that's their decision, and I can support them in that, because they wanted to find, our families still want to try and find the best, home for their child. Every family has to have a home study, so their state will conduct a home study and find them eligible to adopt, these specific children or a certain age group or whatnot. So every family does training, because every home study agency requires training in that regard. But then we have training that our families do, that all of our adopting families do in our program as well. It's actually a similar training because we do international adoptions at Wasatch. And so our training for our international parents, it's really similar to that, because typically they adopt older kids as well with special needs and things like that. Our families don't have to commit until after they've had an opportunity to talk with the adopting family. So then when they are interested and they want to move forward and being considered for this child's adoption, they can, fill out an application. I talk with them. We have what's called a home study approval call. So I'll sit down and talk with them about their home study. We'll go through their home study in depth, as well as talk about the child that they're interested in adopting, and say like, oh, okay, they've got these diagnoses or these behaviors, and tell me what you have in your community that's going to be able to help this child. Or, okay, you're a single mom and you're wanting to adopt this child. What if you're at work, like who's going to pick your child up from school, right? So things like that maybe they're not thinking of, or we just want to really make sure that the family has supports and systems in place, and that they've talked with doctors, dentists, therapists, gotten ideas, so that when they do have the child in their home, and when things come up, because they will, that they're a little bit more prepared, and they've already got those supports in place, as opposed to scrambling because they didn't do anything beforehand.
The children JeNae sees in her program are consistently children whose background exposes them to trauma.
Is there any like consistency with where they have been adopted from? Like, were they adopted when they were older or internationally or?
Yeah. Majority, I don't know numbers wise, but majority of our kids are probably from foster care. And then closely behind that is international. Most of our kids that are adopted through foster care are usually a little bit younger, like 5 or younger. And then just over the years, for whatever reason, trauma, the things like that, it's not working out. I did have one child that this was such a crazy case, but he is doing so well now in his new home. But he was adopted internationally at the age of 10. And he was with his biological family until he was 8, and a lot of stuff happened, and then was placed in an orphanage. His adoptive family was just reminded him too much of his birth family, and he was old enough to remember and to know, and they were from the same culture, and so and just had the same ethnic background, that it was really difficult. But he was placed at 13, and so now he's in a new home and is doing amazing.
Well,
He's doing
that is really something I wouldn't have thought of, that, that similar culture would remind him of home, and that what could be a problem.
Yeah, it
Like,
was a
are there,
big problem for him. Like, his adoptive mom was his birth mom in his eyes, and she abandoned him. That's what and he was with her until he was 8.
right,
And so that was really, really hard for him to let go. And they just knew that he wasn't happy, and he knew that he wasn't happy there. And so, they didn't want to, but moved forward with this, and now he's doing really well.
This kind of placement is rare. If you do have the chance to interact with a family or child going through a second chance adoption, there are ways you can help.
how can we support the kids going through this, the families going through this? Like, do you have any advice for people, for outsiders who just really want to be the support these families need as they're going through this?
Yeah, are you talking the placing family specifically?
Yeah, like if there's a family that's like facing dissolution, or even a family that's adopting from the situation, like, how can other people be supportive of them?
Yeah, just that's the key, just to be supportive, right? To be a listening ear. I think we have so many moms in the program, like I've said before, that feel or have been judged severely. And so I think just in the world that we live in, we all need to be a little bit more loving and caring and supportive. And I think just recognizing that we're not in that person's shoes, right? Like, we don't know the day to day. We just know what their son's like when they're over at our house playing with our son, right? We don't know what bedtime is like, or doing schoolwork, that sort of thing. And so I think that if we're just open to being a listening ear and to listening to their side of the story, I think if people knew what these families went through and were a safe space for them to be able to talk, I don't think there would be judgment in the way that there is. They see this perfect kid on the outside, and they think that these parents are horrible. These parents are just giving up on this child, or they don't love them, or they don't. I'm like, it's quite the opposite. If anything, they love them so much that they're willing, try not to get emotional, but they're willing to let them go. Like, this is their child that they adopted, and they expected it to be a forever thing. And for whatever reason, it's not working out that way. And so, just
Yeah,
listening and being open.
that's a very different perspective than when you hear, oh, so and so dropped their Russian kid off at the airport or whatever, and you think, oh my gosh, that's crazy. And it's like, no, that is not the story you're seeing. That's not the story of dissolution.
Yeah.
That's some other story.
And there might be stories like that. I just personally have never seen it in our program. Every family that comes to us is devastated, is heartbroken, is not wanting to do this, but they've come to the realization that maybe this is what's best for them, right? And so yeah, none of them are ever like, oh my gosh, get this kid out of my house, I hate them. Or I mean, if anything, I have had parents that, because of the trauma that maybe the kid has experienced, there's behaviors going on that's causing trauma within the family. And so this has then caused the parents to have blocked care. And so maybe they're not feeling as much empathy or things like that for the child, but they're never like, oh, I hate this kid or or this or that. They're still like, this is the hardest decision. And so
Right,
I
right.
think people
So,
just need to hear that. And it's just sad.
right.
So people
Well,
assume.
yeah, we need to see like more of like this side of like this is a thing. This is out
Yeah,
there, and this is how
yeah.
it works.
Sometimes people will look at a difficult child and think they can just be put in a facility or given a medication. It is important for people to understand that the children JeNae is trying to help need a more nuanced and personal solution.
There may be the impression that, oh, they're difficult, we're going to put them in some therapeutic home or a group home or whatever, when that's not necessarily the answer, is something I'm hearing from you.
Yes, those things are so expensive. And so if we've got, right, an 11-year-old in the program, the families, like we can't afford 7-8 years of residential until they're 18. That doesn't always work. We do have a few. I do have a couple kiddos that for whatever reason they're not physically safe in their home. So either behaviors that they've experienced, trauma, that sort of thing. And so they're currently in group home respite care settings right now and are doing really well. And so we're trying to find families that can mirror what they're experiencing now, that sort of thing. But yeah, it's not, these families would rather see their children in a different family than in an institution for the rest of their lives.
And I think it's really interesting to hear too how much success you've had, because sometimes you think, oh my gosh, reactive attachment, there's just no hope. It's just, that's it, they're just never going to attach. And you're kind of indicating, well, that maybe that's not the end of the story.
Yeah, yeah. And because I think there's so much more than than the behaviors that they're presenting. So, right, a kid may have 20 diagnoses and their psychological evaluation is saying this and they behave this way and this way, but they're not taking into account the fact that they were in an orphanage for 5 years or that they experienced trauma, right? It's what the kid is presenting to them, and then that's what they're writing down. The kid's super hypervigilant and this and that, and right, but they're not getting the full story. And so yeah, I do think that kids that struggle with reactive attachment can attach. Like the brain is amazing. When we receive enough connection and enough consistent connection, I mean, those pathways are able to heal, and it's just really cool. Plus the child, like say we have a kid that has been adopted into a family and there are 10 other children in the family and they're not doing well, right? And I mean, having 10 kids, I think it would be really difficult to have, one-on-one time with each child consistently and, things like that. And so I'm sure children get missed or, kind of fall behind the scenes. And so we may place this child in a family as the only child or with one other sibling, and they're getting like 80% more attention than they were, like that in and of itself is going to help. The child is still going to struggle with reactive attachment and have symptoms of it, but because the family dynamic is different, it helps in being able to alleviate some of that. And so yeah, it's just it's a cool thing. I can't talk
Yeah.
enough about it.
It sounds amazing. And I'm so glad you're out there trying to facilitate this.
When we see headlines about parents who give up on their adopted children in appalling ways, it's easy to get a simplistic view of children who have experienced extreme trauma and the adults trying to get them out of their lives. There are definitely parents who do extremely improper things with their adopted children. Then there are people like JeNae who are trying to put themselves into this difficult landscape and strive for better outcomes. People within adoption know how messy it is when things work out well. Maybe there needs to be people like JeNae who are trained to give real human solutions to help those struggling when things don't work out well. Find out more about JeNae and the KidTeen program at Wasatch International Adoption on my website, adoptionuncovered.com. And thank you.